Smile, everyone. There isn't enough optimism in the world. This video is about the 5 great challenges of the 20th century and how we've already solved them all. So I've been talking to a lot of people I know recently about how great things are in the world, and I get these crazy reactions from people who, look at me sideways and they're like, Adam, think of all the problems in the world today. Look at the news. Watch even the financial news. It's just bears all the time talking about the problems, the challenges, the politics, this and that. But you really have to step back and look at the history of humanity, even just the last 100 years and everything that's been accomplished, and really realize that if we were to set goals really 100 years ago or 120 years ago, we have accomplished all of them or are on the verge of accomplishing all of them. So in my mind, here are the great challenges of the 20th century and how they've already been solved. Okay, number 1 is war. The first half of the 20th century was probably the most bloody time in human history. We had 2 world wars that were awful in every sense. Since then, it has been a remarkable time of peace, and it has been getting progressively more peaceful. Now, it certainly isn't that way if you're in Syria or in Afghanistan or some other parts of the world that are horrible. But by and large, it is an extremely peaceful time. It's hard to even imagine a war happening at any point in the visible horizon. Obviously, nuclear weapons would make that catastrophic, but the trade always on nuclear weapons or nuclear war is, if you hear a rumor about nuclear war, buy the market. Because if the rumor's true, it doesn't matter anyway, and if the rumor's false, well, everything's going to be just fine and markets will go back up. I will always buy that rumor because I never believe that war is coming. I think this will be a peaceful time for generations. So that problem to me is undoubtedly solved. 20th century problem number 2 is abject poverty. Aside from war, the worst thing that can probably happen to you in your life would be abject poverty. Obviously, most people who are watching this can't even imagine it. But some of those who will have risen from that poverty. And if we just look at the last 50 years, the number of people who have been pulled out of poverty number in the billions. Now, this one isn't complete yet, unlike war, but we have now the capability and the know-how and the resources to drag the entire world out of abject poverty. And, if you've just been in the developed world the last 30 years, you really haven't seen it, but it doesn't take much of a survey of China or even Latin America, all over the world, to see how many people have been pulled from dire, abject poverty. Now, that doesn't mean riches, but it means a bed to sleep in, it means food on the table, it means something in life besides sustenance. And for sure, there are big parts of the world where this is still a problem, but I see a future 20, 50 years out where this is solved. So this problem isn't yet solved, but it's, in my mind, 100% certain that it will be solved in our lifetime. The third great challenge that's been solved is education. Going back 100 years ago, illiteracy was a massive problem, even in the developed world. Today, really nobody is illiterate. Every young person has incredible access to education. Really, all you need now is an internet connection to achieve some solid level of education. There is a generally accepted belief really everywhere in the world about the importance of childhood education and even developing education beyond that. The internet has brought unbelievable access to information around the world, and it has made the world so much more educated than before. There are, again, places in the world that aren't educated. There are challenges to education. The cost of education is a problem, but technology, in my mind, has already solved that, if not for some of the institutionalized problems like the value of a university degree over education, really in the employment market. But by and large, anyone who wants to learn anything right now can learn about it far better than someone even 20 or 25 years ago. It's truly a revolution in humanity in education. So that is just an incredible achievement from humanity that will be paying dividends for centuries and centuries. Embrace that. The fourth great challenge of the 20th century was shelter. 120 years ago, it was difficult to provide shelter for much of the world, many people, reasonably comfortable shelter so we could take advantage of education and work and rest and really just human happiness. Now, we have really achieved more on this front than it seems. And the reason that shelter still seems like, or just housing, probably better put, it still seems like such a challenge because of the high costs. And the trend of the 20th century was urbanization, and this brought tremendous efficiencies, productivity, and really wealth creation, but at the same time it drove up the price of real estate. So in my view, a big trend of the 21st century at some point will be some level of de-urbanization. People are going out less, and that means less of a demand to be in places with other people when you can connect really to the whole world online. And I think that process will make real estate much more affordable, and it's already underway in some places. Unless you're in somewhere like Singapore or perhaps Taiwan or Hong Kong, where there just is no land to build on. But even then you can go up. In my mind, the costs of shelter are going to come down, and this is a massive de-inflationary or deflationary factor that's going to be hugely tradable in the century ahead, really. And at the same time, in the developing world, construction materials have gotten so much cheaper. That it is possible to make shelter for thousands and thousands of people very, very quickly. And I think one of the next big game-changing, life-changing breakthroughs will be the automation of housing construction. Once we have machines that can build houses, and there are already people working on this, then I think you're going to have a deflationary shock. But at the same time, that is still good news by and large. The fifth great challenge of the 20th century that we have solved, or are really on the cusp of solving, is energy. We don't talk enough, or we don't hear enough about how global energy problems are solved. The cost of energy, electrification, has been a challenge, has been a burden on everybody who's trying to make progress for the last 100 years. Think about it, it's solved. We have the prices of solar going down dramatically. We have nuclear power that is essentially limitless. There are renewables that aren't degrading the human environment anymore that are at most 20 years away. The automotive grid will be electrified within 20 or at most 35 years. I don't think people have embraced low energy really beyond that, though. Factories, projects. Look at water, for instance, which is a worry of a lot of people I talk about and say how optimistic I am. In a future of unlimited cheap energy, you can desalinize water from the oceans. That is easily done now, if not for the energy costs. So picture a world where energy costs next to nothing, and that is the future. And if you extrapolate from that, it is far more game-changing than almost anything you can imagine, and it's incredibly positive for humanity, markets, growth, everything looking forward. All right, so I hope my ideas about the future, about the great 20th century challenges, have given you something to think about. I'm optimistic about the future, and I really think you should be optimistic as well. But if not, that's cool too. I'll continue to be that way, and I've certainly listened to ideas on the other side. Now, at the same time, my next video will be about the 3 great challenges of the 21st century, and really we have no idea how to solve these ones just yet. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, tell somebody about ForexLive. We really appreciate it. I hope I've given you something to think about. For ForexLive, I'm Adam Budd.